Welcome back to the Rally Room, back again for another episode. I'm your host, Isaac Hunter. I've got a really special guest today, someone outside of RID. So I think there's a lot to dive into this. It's Cory Clark, a.k.a. the sales therapist.
Yep. Happy to be here, dude. Bro. Thank you. Yeah, stoked to be here.
From neighbors to hopping on a
We
pod
are
together.
neighbors, dude. That's fun. Yeah, yes.
I recently moved, but still
kind of neighbors. Yeah.
30 seconds away.
Yeah.
But so just to kind of jump into I'm sure there's going to be people that know you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've built a social media following, and a lot of people in the industry. But give us a little bit of background and kind of like where you came from. I know you did sales for a long time. You started. I did a little bit of research.
Nice.
You might have gotten that LinkedIn notification. I was on the. You started in 2015 doing sales.
Yep.
So you were a sales bro for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of walk us through what brought you
here
today, just from a high level.
Sold pest control pretty much all through my undergrad, and then through grad school. And
what'd you
just
study?
Often studied. My undergrad was in psychology and then marriage and family studies. And then I always wanted to become a therapist. So that's why, not always, but that's what I pursued. So I was like, sales was good because I stayed in it because I was good at it. And so I did it for 6 years, essentially off and on, all through school and in pursuit to pursue being a therapist. So that's what I did. So grad school was at Oklahoma State. And that was 2017 to 2019, something like that. And maybe anyways, went to grad school. And it wasn't really until becoming a therapist, like where it kind of hit me. I'm like, dude, this is like, this is what the sales world needs, not just, the typical tips and tricks for mental health, but like, there's something uniquely weird going on in the sales space. Like, and in grad school, I'm sitting there, I'm like, there's a bigger problem here in the sales world. Like, guys are feeling way more emotionally drained. They're struggling with different type of emotions, different levels of anxiety. I'm like, okay, it's obviously not getting solved. And so it wasn't really till becoming a therapist that kind of opened my eyes to be like, okay, this is maybe something. And that's honestly, actually, I was like, my performance shifted even more so in grad school. I was like knocking less and making more money. And it was like, I was just changing my relationships, my relationship with sales. And I was always good at it, but I also felt more emotionally drained than I wanted to feel. And so, but then I just kept coming back because I was making money, and yeah, so then it just kind of clicked. So then I ran with it. I had the idea in grad school and just went all in on it because I thought it would work, and it is.
So as much as anybody else what the job is like.
Oh, dude, yes. Done summers, been out there, yes. Yeah, totally.
And
the culture, everything, yeah.
I've talked about this on previous pods before, but I went probably a few years before I felt like the first level of anxiety that I ever had. Maybe it was because I was like naive, and maybe it was just like, oh, this is just great. Like I kind of, I'm just kind of floating through the job for the first couple of years, but then like it was like year 3 where I remember I could not get out of my door at one point. Did you ever like experience that at all throughout your sales time? Or was the more, you said there was like something missing, and I think a lot of people in the sales industry kind of suppress emotion. Did you feel that as well? Or is this more something you noticed a lot of other people were kind of feeling?
I definitely noticed other people were feeling it too, right? Like you get your homies that you're like, you can just tell everyone's feeling it. No one's really talking about it though. In the way that's like productive. It's more like, no one's really talking about it at all. Honestly, that was my experience. It was just like, it just wasn't being talked about. And I just was like, I'm naturally a hard worker, and I show up and like, was raised that way, whatever. And so like, but for me, my first experience in sales, for sure, it was like a lot of like suppressing emotions or just feeling a ton and not letting them be felt or seeing them or being aware of them. And so where it just like build up. And then you get that July, August time where like, dude, I'm freaking gassed.
Yeah.
I am so drained. And it was like a different, like, that feeling where you work hard and you're tired. It was like you've been working hard, you're tired, but there's like another level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know exactly.
And it's that was for me, that was like that's where I felt that's when I maybe sat in my car a little too long, or I was being lazy or whatever. It's like when that exhaustion really sat in, and that would happen pretty much every year. I'd still work through it. I'd still make good money, do the thing, right? But I never really finished the way I want to until grad school.
Yeah.
Until grad school, I was like, because I changed, and I changed my relationship with all my emotions to it, and the way I was viewing things. I was just way more self-aware, seeing it, thinking differently than what all my managers told me to think, right? Like whatever the tips are, right? Or the little phrases. I'm like, that wasn't never actually helpful for me.
So what's cool, and I want to keep diving into this, is you did sales all through grad school. You wanted to be a therapist along the way. You were studying psychology along the way. Did you have like a turning point, in any of your summers where you were like, I'm going to start implementing some of these things that like I'm feeling? Or did that kind of come after the fact where you're just like, oh man, like this is what I wish I would have done differently, and now I want to go help people?
Yeah, it's wait, what was your last part?
Well, just basically, because you were doing psychology along the whole way, did you, like your last summer, let's take your last summer, for example.
Yeah.
Do you feel like anything was different from that summer where you were able to implement some of these, strategies or things that you were able to do? Because I'm sure that was a lot different of a summer from year one.
Yeah, grad school was very off and on because I was working a lot in grad school too and seeing clients and that type of stuff. But yeah, that's when it really clicked for me. And like I had some ideas in my undergrad of like, hey, there's a problem. Like that's kind of when it started. Like the seed was planted, like, hey, here's a huge problem in the industry, like no one's solving. I just didn't really feel like I was going to solve that at that time in my life, right? And then it wasn't until grad school I was like, no, like we're going to figure this crap out, And so grad school for me, I remember like seeing 20 plus clients a week in grad school. And then knocking like 20 hours a week, and like doing these two worlds at the same time.
So were you in Oklahoma knocking doors?
Yeah. Yep. And doing it at the same time and just being like weirdly, these worlds are so similar. Like I'm like working with clients on some emotions, like just their life. And I'm like, this is the same crap that I felt and people feel in this industry, but no one's doing therapy in this industry. And obviously it's transitioned. So my business has transitioned so much now, but that was the initial thing, was like, gosh, there's something here for guys to process and work through, because sales brings out parts of ourselves that most jobs just won't even touch. Sales and entrepreneurship are the two things that just like, dude, they'll target your biggest fears, insecurities, big emotions, biggest, thoughts, like just these parts of you that are like, dude, like no job. There's very few jobs that if you were working at Walmart, it wouldn't be touching those. Yeah. But here you are, and it's because it stretches you, it pushes you. There's rejection. It's so weird. There's the culture, the pressure, the performance. It's like it's an incubator for like personal growth. That's why I love sales too, because if you let it, it'll like push you to become the best version of you.
Yeah.
Some people take a little different route, but
just like diamonds aren't formed.
Yeah, and that sounds cliche, but it's real. Yeah, it's yeah.
So I always used to teach my reps this, and I want you to shoot me down, because every summer I used to teach people I used to tell people, I wouldn't teach people this, but I would tell people like, you almost have to become a different person to survive and to thrive doing this job, because you've got to turn off your emotions.
Yeah.
You cannot feel.
Yeah.
You've got to just become a zombie for, whatever, if you're doing solar, for that blitz, or if you're doing pest control, 5 months of just zombie. But I've realized, as I retrospectively look back on my summer, I could have handled that a little better. So what would you say to somebody like me if I could go back?
I'm glad you brought that up, because in the manager's defense, I'm like, it's hard, dude. Like, because sales targets those parts, it's like, we don't know how to help these guys sometimes with these emotions, these insecurities, or these fears that they're holding on to. And they're not even telling us what the actual thing is, because they're not self-aware, right? So it's like the easiest thing is like, we got to become a different person, And actually, there's probably times where that strategy actually can work for mental health. We don't have to get into that right now, but
no, that is interesting.
There is an aspect of that like, there's times where it's like, no, we go there, and that's okay. But for a whole summer, is that the way to do it? Like sustainably? No.
Yeah.
Like it can't, it can't be forever. Right. And so, my advice to that manager would be do the work yourself too. Like first, just like go, it doesn't have to be me, but just go work with someone or be vulnerable or be real, like be aware of your emotions. Like there's this awesome tool called an emotion wheel. If you type it in on Google, type in emotion wheel, and it'll just give you a whole list of emotions, and it'll help you understand like what I'm actually feeling. A lot of guys are like, oh, dude, I'm feeling anxious. I'm like, okay, let's dive in. And they're at, oh, it's insecure. Oh, it's overwhelmed. Oh, it's pressure. Oh, threatened. Like very different than anxiety.
And the way you would handle that.
It's like, oh, I feel threatened. Oh, why? Oh, it's totally targeted towards this buddy of mine that's competing with me, and it's competition day, and like I'm feeling threatened. What do I do with this feeling? Right? Rather than just like I was never actually aware of it, I just let it own me, right? Does that make sense?
And it's a lot of young guys too.
And so no one's taught this, right? And so that's where this is where like clicked for me. It was just like, dude, self-awareness is the superpower. And so if you're a manager, like, how do I tell my guys, like, dude, become the most self-aware you ever and work with somebody, or just figure that out, how to do that yourself. My advice is like work with someone, like figure that out and build that self-awareness. Because once you can do that for you, it is going to be a little bit easier now to help someone else work through their emotions if you're working through yours.
Yeah.
Right?
So as a therapist, how do you help somebody kind of become like self-aware? Like obviously it's probably just asking the right questions, you know, like questions I don't even think to ask myself, you know, questions I probably sometimes don't even want to ask myself avoid asking myself. But like, you know, if the answer to like finding balance, and I loved one of your videos where you're going to have fluctuations in you know what I'm talking about? Oh, that was so money. I don't know how that's not viral.
Dude, there's some content of mine I'm like, how did this not go viral?
But I want to talk about that for a sec, because if you maybe just explain it. You explain it better than me.
Yeah. So for sales, and this is great. Yeah, this is actually a reframe that I created in grad school, which is funny.
Oh, dude.
And so this is like, it changed my whole paradigm, right? And this is, so essentially the concept is, within a level, and it's a truth. So what I mean by truth is like the sun's coming up tomorrow. That's a truth. You can't change it. It's a truth. Like for me, God is truth. Like I can't change that. It's truth. So when we're speaking truths, we got to speak truths. Like you can't change this one. And so I believe that this is a sales truth. And the truth is, within a level of consistency in sales, fluctuation is allowed. Meaning, if let's say we're selling pest control and we're trying to do, 15K a week, and that's my average, right? What's the chances I hit 15K on the dot every single week? Every single week, 15K on the dot for a whole summer. What are the chances?
Probably zero. And if it is, you're probably selling yourself too short. If that's happening.
If that is happening, right? But the chances are just like so low. What are the chances I average out around 15K a week? A lot higher, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, we can find consistency. We can consistently hit an average of 15, but within that consistency, fluctuation will happen. There might be a week where you're at 8K, or if you're 15K average, you're probably going to be 8 to 22K in that range ish, right? If you're below 8, you're like, red, yellow red flag. If you're above 22, you're like, freaking great week, dude, right? Yeah. But for the most part, you probably float around here. And so the point is, I have to accept that fluctuation is okay. And so when it has that 8K week, I'm like, dude, I'm chilling. This is part of the process. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Or if it's like 3 p.m. and I don't have a deal yet, okay. Or 5 p.m. I don't have a deal yet, I'm allowed to have days like that, right? What's not allowed to fluctuate though, and this is where guys go wrong, is now their effort starts to fluctuate. Right? Their effort, their energy, like those things start to fluctuate too much to where now it does throw it off. Right. Yeah. And so for me, I'm like, dude, my process isn't going to fluctuate. So now I can fully trust that I'm going to be all right. And then if you can believe that and sit there and like let yourself go there emotionally, dude, it's a pretty rad spot to be.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, oh, I don't have a deal. I'm like, bro, chill.
You're all right.
It's okay. It's a truth you're never going to avoid.
Yep.
You can't run from it. You got to face it and be okay with it.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever read the book As a Man Thinketh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that book.
That is a very, very good book.
I actually love it so much that I have it here with me.
Look
today.
at that, bro.
I'm going to read a poem from it at the end. It's one of my favorites.
I love
but,
that. That's amazing.
You know, it's like there's a saying that we use at RIT a lot, that a lot of the guys use, where it's, one bad day doesn't mean you're going to have, one bad day. There's two kind of paradigms you can have with this, where it's, if on the negative side, one bad day can turn into a bad week. One bad week can roll into a bad month. One bad month can roll into a bad summer. On the flip side, all you have to have is one good day to turn it into a better week. I remember my second summer, I was getting cooked. I had a bagel day on Monday. On Tuesday, I sold one at 9 p.m. And they canceled. And it was genuinely the worst 2-day streak I've ever had. Wednesday, just a couple of counts. Thursday, a couple of counts. Friday and Saturday, I had 6 pieces both days, and I was able to make a good week. And that's where I was able to kind of bring this together, where one good day can roll into a good week. One good week can roll into a good month, and 1 month into a good summer.
Honestly, you're speaking on a good truth of just go experience it. Go test out this truth, right? Let yourself go there. And when you have experiences like that, now that creates data to where that data is you can't deny that now, So next time you're in a situation does it suck? Yeah. But I've been here.
Yeah.
I've been here.
Well, you talk about self-awareness, and maybe this is the answer to this, but I think one thing that a lot of sales guys find that hurts them so much is they get into a slump and they don't recognize it, and they can't pull themselves back out. I think of quicksand, and then they're all of a sudden it's gone, and all of a sudden they look back and they might have regret. They might have not been able to do what they were probably capable of. How do you pull yourself out of a rut, or how do you recognize when you're I'm not performing at my best? I need to take a step back in order to move forward.
Yeah. It's going back to that concept of let's say the emotional exhaustion, right? That hits people, right? Typically that level of exhaustion, there was so many emotions before that were felt.
That led to that point.
Yeah. And so how to get out of a rut, not saying ruts won't happen if you do this, but you can avoid a lot of them if you are processing emotions more frequently.
So don't be like me. Don't be the zombie.
Yeah, I think where sometimes people are scared to process emotions, they're oh, now that I know what I'm feeling, what do I do with it? That's where not being alone is really helpful. Having safe places to go and process and talk through things is really helpful, because you might feel threatened and you're dude, I don't know what to do with this, but you have a buddy or a mentor or a spouse or a coach or a therapist or someone to work through and talk through this emotion with. That's why I let clients voice message me in between our one-on-one sessions. Partly is because I want them processing their emotions. And when they do that, having the access to be able to hit me up and say, hey, this, and I have a framework for it. I don't just let them call me and complain or voice message me and complain, but it's voice message me as a self-aware human being and I will respond.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, dude, I'm feeling threatened. It's because of this. This is what I think I might do with it. Okay, cool. I'm going to respond. Right?
Come to me in a good state of mind so we can actually talk through
this.
And
so I help them understand how to do that. Right. But I think that's it, is be okay trying to understand what you're feeling more frequently and work through that emotion so it doesn't build up. Because if you feel inadequate and then it lets you, then because you feel inadequate, am I good enough? Yada, yada. It creates pressure. And now that pressure is creating a threat, let's say. And then you go out and you're it's 3 p.m. You don't have a deal yet. 5 p.m. You don't have a deal yet. You're and those emotions build. And then you don't sell that day. And now you're embarrassed. And that embarrassment turns into shame. I kind of suck at this. Can I do this? I got to sell tomorrow. If I don't sell, then what? I won't make money. You know what I'm saying? It's and then you do it 2 days and you're frick, you're in this little rut.
Yeah.
This emotional hole where it all started with just, you felt a little inadequate today.
It can snowball into something bigger.
And sometimes the solution's simple is to a sales buddy, hey bro, part of me feels a little inadequate today. And I know that's not true. I'm going to show up and just try my best and do my thing. But I just wanted to get that off my chest.
That's all.
If someone said that to me, I'm bro, you're a freaking dog, dude.
Yeah.
right? And then you go see him work, and then he works hard and he shows up, and you're like, dude, you proved it. You proved yourself right today that you are adequate, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's literally that simple.
Yeah. So with like all of this so far, I mean, we've talked a lot about like emotion. We've talked about just like the next thing I want to kind of dive into is like what separates average from like the top performers, because I think everybody has lofty goals going into the summer, and then the summer happens and the things we've just talked about happens. So would you say that the top performers are the ones that are able to do this? Because I know not all the top performers are hitting
you're
you
right
up.
They're not.
So like what is it on top of what we've already talked about? What is it that separates like the good, or how are people able to actually hit their goals and go hit these lofty numbers?
Yeah. Couple things. So I have worked with a lot of reps that have achieved golden doors and done that, and I've seen that like with them and been in that process with them, and like it's a fight. Like that is we'll just use that performance as a measure. Like that is a freaking goal.
Dude, I'm not qualified as a therapist, but like I've had plenty of conversations with my brother who hit 1 million last summer.
Oh,
so
wow.
Sometimes I feel like I was a therapist along the way.
Yeah.
Like, and by that I mean I was just the guy in his corner, or I was just there for him to talk to him, and it's cool talking to you about this because I'm realizing that that's really all he needed was just somebody to talk to.
Yeah,
like you said.
yeah.
But,
And typically those that are performing at that level do have someone to process thoughts with. They're not fully alone. But we'll just talk high performance in general. What separates people from those levels, right? I'd say one, there's definitely a level of like commitment, because I've also seen people get golden doors where I'm like, that is unhealthy. Like the goal kind of is unhealthy, and so the golden door, like it's a lot
tough.
of sacrifice,
it's crazy,
right?
dude.
And so that's where like whenever someone tells me they want to get a golden door, like I really process it with them. Like you got to make sure this is an alignment, because it's
sure?
a lot,
All right, let's go all in.
But I'm saying like sometimes people achieve a lot, but they're unhealthy. Like it came from actually a pretty unhealthy place, like the motivation
For why they wanted to go and be that.
Yes.
Okay.
And so sometimes you will get high performers who are like, oh, dude, this guy's such a stud. And I'm like, he's mentally struggling actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like
I had a client this last summer, and he's a homie. We did the whole, are you going to get a golden door? And we processed it. And I'm like, okay, like I feel good in it. Like both felt good, like you pursuing it. There was a part of me that was like, this is coming from, and I challenged him. I'm like, this is the place where I think you're like, some of this motivation's coming from. And it was much this chip on my shoulder, prove them wrong type of vibe. Right. And
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm going to do it to prove me right. I don't need to prove them wrong, because once I prove you wrong and I get it,
Then
I'm
what?
still empty.
Yeah. I like
right? That. But if I prove me right, that's self-love, right? Yeah. So we talked about this, whatever, and we talked about it, reframed it before, but it still was like, prove me wrong, so it was a lot of like, you could tell through the achievement side that there was that aspect of it, about like 400K deep, lost the motivation. He lost the motivation. I'm like, wow, I got to do another 250K.
Yeah.
What got him to that 250K? Proved me right.
He went and hit it.
Awesome. But it was there's a level of that motivation there had to be a shift there of like, he realized like at 400K, like no one actually is really like, people care, but the people I'm trying to prove wrong, like is it really worth the 250K? Because I'm struggling a lot. Like this is hard. And then it was like, you're going to do it for you. And so he did it for him, and it was a more prove me right that I can do it, and so it was just healthy. Right. And so I think there's this with these high performers, they are self-aware. I think a lot of them, you have to be to some extent where you're processing it with people, but even if they're not, the one thing I've noticed, like the ingredient, whether it's unhealthy or healthy, they are committed, dude.
Yeah.
It's commitment. Like they're so bought into this goal and achieving it to where like nothing's going to stop them.
There's no plan B.
Yeah. And I never felt fully that in pest control. Like I was always a high performer and did well, but then it wasn't like what was in alignment was grad school and doing that and paint, you know?
Yeah, I was kind of the same way, and I'm
Yeah.
maybe the trend is you should just drop out of school and just go all in on sales.
I don't
No,
know.
just kidding.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I was I got my degree in finance, and after each school year I went out and knocked, but in the back of my mind was like, I've got this safety net that like if all else fails, obviously I'm still in the sales industry and this is what I love doing, but it is interesting when you kind of put it like that. Like those guys are committed. Like any goal at the door I've ever met, like committed more than anybody I've ever met to a goal.
And I felt that in my business now for sure. Like I'm not like, there's nothing like, it would take a lot for me to stop doing what I'm doing. Like there's just a commitment that I feel where I'm like, no, it's just there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so like, there's that contagious part of these guys where I feel like they're committed to the actions. They're committed to it. They're just a high level commitment.
Yeah. So I have a couple more questions just about sales reps in general, just tips on like how to have a good summer, but like, and then, I want to talk about you a little bit more too, but, with sales reps, I know, routines are talked about a lot of the times. As far as just like tips and tricks you have, what are like some like daily practices that, help guys with mental health, keeping their emotions in check, making sure they've got that self-love, they're performing at their peak level. Do you have any wisdom there?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question. It really is. I'd say because the job brings out lots of thoughts and emotions naturally. I mean, you do get these guys that are kind of like weirdly like robots.
Yeah.
Like borderline autistic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're just like, that's rude to say.
we use Asperger's.
I'm like, wow. They're just plugging and playing, For most of us, it does bring out thoughts and emotions. Like even if it's one person, just find at least one person that you can be like, that you can take the mask off with and just be real. Like, I know that's not a routine, but that was for sure one thing I'd say, like, at least have one person that you can just mask off, dude, and just be real. Doesn't mean you complain and play victim to your crap, but you can be real with. Because a lot of guys don't have that.
Yeah.
They really don't. They keep part of the mask on, and so I think being authentic and being real, it does wonders for mental health, truthfully.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So this brings up a question because, like, I think about some of the teams that I've ran and, people I've surrounded myself with, and nobody likes a negative Nancy.
No.
And
no complaining.
Maybe
sucks.
they were the ones taking their masks off with everyone kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, see, that's, can I speak on that point?
Yeah. Or maybe they were like taking the mask off and then just like turning it up a notch and being dramatic. I don't know,
Yeah.
But like,
and that's where I'd say that the mask is, that's where I'm saying, that's where like a lot of guys in the industry are like, no, let's not go there to the emotions, is because, and it is hard. Like I get it.
You want to have that positive culture.
You do. And so they say, no, no complaining, don't bring it. And so guys are just like, well, I guess I won't share anything. But there's a difference between vulnerability and complaining, right? Complaining is like, dude, this job freaking sucks. Like, I don't want to go out today. Like, or like, I suck at this, whatever. Like that. It's negative.
Yeah.
Doesn't help anything. Or this area, or cops came and dude, it just was like, it's so annoying. I'm like,
victim mentality.
That there's not a place for that.
Yeah.
Not vulnerability. Dude, part of me feels nervous and, I'm kind of working through that. And like, I'm feeling nervous, like if I'm going to get a deal, but you know what? I'm going to show up and do my thing. Dope. Like that's
like
real.
That.
Right? That's real. Or, dude, part of me feels so embarrassed because I didn't get a deal today. But, I just wanted to share that with you. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like, don't feel embarrassed. You're chilling. Like, tomorrow's a new day. Like, thanks so much for sharing that, whatever. But it's just like being real. Right? And so vulnerability is a skill for sure. And it's hard to like teach that to guys. But ideally, you create a space where guys can be real. Or if you're not doing that with the team, I'm saying find one person to be vulnerable with. Doesn't mean complain to them, but be self-aware and be vulnerable with, that would be the ideal.
I like that. And I've
because it's
never,
ownership, you know. Yeah.
well, I've never compartmentalized the difference between like victim mentality and vulnerability. To
Yeah.
me, that was all the same thing,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
not
It's
at
different.
all.
Yeah.
It's not at all. And I recognize that now a little bit more,
Mhm.
as I've matured, through the industry and stuff. And I, look back and, I'm not saying I'm perfect and stuff too. I think there's always like this level of like masculinity that a lot of guys like want to put up, but, or even just suppressing emotion, I guess is maybe a better way to put it. 'Cause shout out, we got a lot of female knockers too that crush it. But, so now let's kind of shift for the last little bit, because obviously you add a ton of value, to a lot of guys. And, I've known quite a few people that have worked with you. We've kind of chatted about that, and you've made a big impact. You found like a niche in the sales industry. And so tell me kind of like what you're up to now. I know you've got the collective going. Yeah. So what's kind of going on there? What's the point?
Yeah. So the business has transitioned a little bit, from what it was. And yeah, the Instagram brand, right, is the sales therapist, whatever. And then I don't know, like a year and like 3 months ago, I was just kind of at this point in my business where I'm like, I kind of built it to what I wanted it to be. And I was just like, I don't know, I probably had like 300, 400 plus clients. And I just was like, this was last July.
And there's only one of you.
One of me. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, great business, grateful for it. But I was like, how do I have 400 clients going through the same thing and not one of my clients knows each other? And it was kind of this therapist lens of like you don't go see a therapist and go know who all their clients are. That's not a thing, But for me, I'm like, gosh, this industry is so, and so I just felt like this huge pull to like create more community in the industry. And I saw some people, like I saw community growing in that aspect of it. And it just kind of hit me where I'm like, what if I did put 50 guys, even if they're at different companies, in the same room and created like super real relationships, like, and just like we got real together. Because I'm getting real with my clients one-on-one. Like I know them really, really well. They know me. Like I'm vulnerable with my clients. Like I ain't perfect. I got my shiz and my emotions and thoughts and whatever. So I have this one-on-one relationship with my client, but I'm like, man, and I'm inviting them to go back and kind of be vulnerable in life, but it's hard. And so I'm like, what if I created the container, like this safe container where guys could actually just be real? And a lot of guys think they do. And then I get them in my group and they're like, holy freak. Like I've never been this real ever in my life. And I've never seen 40 plus guys be this real. So the collective essentially launched Group 1 in January, and it's a year program. So Group 1, CG1 is still in their program. And then CG2 launched just a few weeks ago. And then CG3 will launch in March. But it's a 50-man group. It's a year program. You stay with your 50 guys the whole time. And it is the most real, authentic community for sales guys to be in. And it's guys from different companies. No one cares. There's no work with me, nothing, like masks are off. It's true authenticity, true connection. And yeah, it's a safe container. Everyone respects that a ton. But we got guys opening up in the group about all sorts of things, dude. Things they've never talked about, never worked through, traumas that they have or holding on to. And we do retreats, and they get access to one-on-one sessions. I mean, it's a really cool thing that we're doing. But the reason I'm going all in that now is because clients are creating change way faster than I ever have had clients create change because of the community.
It's power numbers.
It is really cool. So yeah, we're just been growing that and going all in on that. And that has been like super, super fulfilling for me. And just to see guys get like really real like that. And yeah, it's special. It's one of those things too, where it's like, until you experience it, like everybody, like if you're curious on it, call someone in my group and just talk with them. Cause they'll be like, don't think twice. Like it's the best. But also it's like, it's really hard to sell vulnerability. And like,
yeah,
it's really hard to sell like, hey, come get real.
Until you can get people into the right state of mind, and then they're like,
you got to get them there.
What I needed.
Yeah, because once they're there and people, it's like domino effect. Everyone's like, I can't wait to share. I can't wait to show me. and everyone, like, some people are like the most love they've ever felt, the most seen they've ever felt, the most real they've ever been with themselves. And so when you get that real, dude, ownership and like just working hard and like taking ownership of your crap, dude, 10 times better, 10 times easier.
One of the other videos you talked about, this kind of reminds me of, is I wrote it down because I want to say it right, but you said something about how increasing responsibility is also an increase in power.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
That was so good. I don't know how that one doesn't have like 20 million views. And I'm like super passionate about this too.
Yeah.
But the thing is I don't think a lot of people know or have the discipline, maybe that's the right word, on, or like where to start on how to increase responsibility in their life and increase responsibility wherever they're at, you know, whether they're a first year, a third year, a fifth year, or, you know, it doesn't even need to be sales related, but it's like, how can I add value right now? You know, that's ultimately going to help me be a better person or help me become a manager or something like that too. And so I think that's kind of speaks to kind of like what you just said. It's just like, that's what this is doing, is it's helping people like open up to like, you know, their potential.
Yeah.
So,
and it is interesting. I never thought about the what we do at the group of increasing responsibility, but it does to themselves too. Like, because they're way more real with themselves than ever, like now they're responsible to take care of that.
Yeah, it's money. Have you ever, just kind of like high level, you know, because I'm an entrepreneur right now. I've never started my own business.
Sure.
But, you know, I am, you know, I do feel like RID is very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I've been able to be a part of that. And I think that they've cultivated a good culture around that.
Yeah, it's cool.
There's also entrepreneurs, which is kind of what you've done. Was that like a tough shift? I mean, I knew you always wanted to do it, but you did well with sales.
Yeah.
Was that like a tough shift going into like just jumping all in and kind of leaving that behind when you were like, all right, because you are an entrepreneur, you're running your own business. Like,
yeah.
Is that scary?
It's hard because part of my story, and I won't go into my whole story right now, but leaving grad school, I mean, grad school is expensive, you know, and so leaving grad school, we didn't have much money. So it really didn't have too much to lose either when I started. And so it was kind of like, I didn't have like a golden handcuff experience either. Right. Because I had ended up spending, like, paying for grad school, and I graduated debt free, which is rad.
That's awesome.
But I didn't have, like, I had like $6,000 in my bank at leaving grad school. And that was actually because we sold one of our cars. So really I had like $3,000.
Do you have kids?
Yeah. We just had she was 6 months when I graduated. So I took out a $30,000 loan, to start my business.
Oh, wow.
Just for living.
Yeah.
And I didn't make money for 9 months. And
that is tough.
It was, but it was time. Like, yeah, it was really hard. I don't want to relive that ever, but I wouldn't change it for the world at the same time. But I didn't have, like, sometimes these guys have like this, they are making $200K, $300K a year, right? For me, I was making good money, but it was just going, right? I was paying for school, doing the thing, whatever. And so I think it is challenging for some of these guys to like take the leap. And for some of them, some of you guys listening to this, it's not right. But there is some where, like, I think sales and it's cool that RID like values entrepreneurship and just like teaches that, you know. I think there's a lot of culture in the industry that's like preach abundance, like be abundant, and then at the end of the day it's like scarcity.
Yep.
Like, go believe in yourself as much as you can, and then the rep does, and they crush it, they make money, and they do believe in themselves, and then they're like, I might leave to pursue something of my own, and it's like, no, don't leave, don't believe in yourself that much, right? Where I think that's actually the beauty of sales is, like, if you have guys to the point where they're like willing to go pursue something, I'm like, dude, you did a great job as a company, you know. It might not be the right thing still for them, but like, and that's where like some reps might feel a pull to go start something, and I'm like, cool, like,
yeah,
don't hold on to that guy, like, it's okay, you know. And that's my opinion.
No, dude, I'm 100% with that, and it's crazy you say that because a lot of people aren't like that, But I mean, I would hope that anybody that's worked with me, that has gone on to do other things, would be able to say that, like, when that crossroads came and they're like, dude, I think I'm going to go pursue X, Y, or Z, or, you know, go to another company or go do another industry. I'll sit down with them. I'll hash it out and be like, okay, like, if this is genuinely how you feel, and, you know, like, I only want you here if you want to be here.
Yeah,
you know, at the end of the day, I'm not here to just, like, not
convince and
chain you. You know, it's not going to do you any good. And, like, you got to come from a place of, you know, ingenuity and always, like,
you do
putting them first, because, like, they're real people too. This is not about, like, money. It can't be about that. That will never lead to, like, sustainable growth.
Yeah.
So, how can people get involved? Like, follow Cory, obviously, the sales therapist, on Instagram. He's got good stuff. But other than that, like, you know.
Yeah, we're actually rolling. We're going to be rolling out some, like, again, because we're scaling, because again, it was just like me, and now we have a team. So I have a sports psychologist on staff. We got like 2 other people on staff now. And so that's like super rad. And we're scaling out some cool systems for guys to be able to get involved on like a cheaper entry level way to come the new year. So like we'll announce that and get that out there too. But and then the groups my main focus personally will be on these like 50-man groups for the most part. I'll do some other stuff too, but so we run 2 groups a year at a time, and next one's in March. And it's rad. It's the best. Yeah. It's really cool. And a cool story, real quick little story. Last summer in group 1, we had a guy that was, he hit like 300K in rev or whatever. That was his goal. And when he hit it, he did a group FaceTime, right? It's me, him, and then 8 other guys from 8 different pest companies.
That's sick.
All cheering on him that have been in this journey with him through the whole summer to hit this goal. And so that was like a really cool moment of like, dang, there's like
that's
all cool. These competitors just like, and it was just all abundance, all love. So that's
really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's a really cool what you're doing, because that is a big shift from, you know, the shark world that the sales industry kind of has been, especially door to door. But I want to end with,
let's do it,
a poem that I've had in store. As Man Thinketh. I mean, I know you've read it. I don't know why I just kept on thinking about this book while I was thinking about you.
Good.
Just like psychology and stuff. But this book absolutely changed my life. I've posted this poem on my Instagram probably 5 times.
Cool.
And you might recognize it, but I'll just read it real quick. And, you know, here's my Edgar Allan Poe voice. No, I'm just kidding. But it says, "Mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes. The tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass."
Yeah, that's so rad. That's
so good. And I think
you can have a podcast just on that.
For real, we could chop that up for a long time. And you know, I love what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
You know, get involved. Cory's an awesome guy. He's been my neighbor for a few years now. Not only is he just a super chill dude, but as you guys have seen today, super genuine too. So thanks for tuning in. Cory, appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me out.
See you guys soon.